Hi Ryan, thanks for doing this. Firstly, have you enjoyed a bit of time off?
Well, ironically, I don't think I've had any time off. I was expecting to have some, but I've been running around and talking to players and getting people signed up ready in preparation for next season. So for me, I think I'll have a bit of time off in June as opposed to May.
This may sound a bit of a silly question to you, but people still want, are you still the manager here?
Well, it's a strange thing not to be able to give you a clear answer. But we changed the structure of the club a few years back to have a director of football and a head coach because we felt that it gave a bit more stability throughout the whole club. So the whole structure doesn't rely on one person. I am absorbing the managerial duties at the moment with a view of developing from within the squad. There are some clear candidates amongst the older players, but they're not quite ready yet to give up their playing responsibilities to move across the fence and become the head coach or manager or however you want to call it. So I think it's important to give them the time to develop that side of it. In the past, when players have become player coaches and then straight in, it can be very hit or miss. And I think learning the other side of it takes time. So we're prepared to leave it as it currently is, and give them the time to develop into the role so that they're given the best opportunity to succeed.
Is that what sort of time frame can you put on that, or is it a bit more ad hoc and you're sort of whenever the right candidate is ready?
Yeah, it's sort of the time frame is dependent on how they respond to being given certain duties as we go. So it's a phase out and a phase in process. That might take a season, it might take 2 seasons, it might take 18 months. It's all depending on how they respond to the added duties. Tom and Clayton, they're great characters, and it's clear that they have a future in the game beyond playing. And it's important that when they do make that transition, they're given the best opportunity to do it well.
We'll recap sort of last season from a first team perspective. We'll start off with just a general overview for how you felt it went.
We achieved the goal of maintaining our Conference South status. We also managed to reach the FA Cup first round, which we haven't done for I think 11, 12 years. So on that front, it was successful. Points total, I think that we were a little bit short, if I'm honest. With about 10 games to go, I wanted us to finish in the top 10. That's what I was expecting, and we didn't quite reach that. So there were many good points, many positives to take, but I think the last 10 games sort of took the wind out of our sails a little bit, and that might be a good thing because it keeps everybody's feet on the ground.
We'll go into a bit more depth then. Starting with, as you mentioned, an FA Cup run, what sort of impact can that have, and what did it have? Did we utilise it as well as we could have, do you think?
Well, I would say over the last 4 years, when we've had better starts to the league campaign, the one thing that was missing was an FA Cup run, and I think that had we had an FA Cup run at that time, with the league form a lot better, we could have used the added exposure more effectively. But this time around, I think getting the club noticed through the FA Cup run, I think it's done an awful lot of good for the club. Not just, people talk about the finance behind it, and that's often the one thing that people want to focus on. But there are wider benefits to it. The community trust have found that when they walk into a new school, people are aware of what the football club does, and that's off the back of the exposure we got during the FA Cup. So it has wider benefits than just the financial.
You started the season with a plan under Mickey Bell as the head coach, but the landscape changed relatively quickly. Can you just talk us through that sort of decision to move on from Mickey? And take
Well,
away?
when the job was advertised and we interviewed, we were quite clear that we wanted somebody to not come in and make wholesale changes. We wanted them to maintain or continue down the path that we'd already set ourselves on. And after a few months throughout pre-season and moving into the season, it was clear that Mickey felt that he perhaps wanted to take the club in a slightly different direction. So we gave him the room to do that, and unfortunately for him, the results and the performances didn't leave us with much hope for the rest of the season. And at that point you have to weigh up all of the options, and in times where you have a bad run of results, you also have to look at the manner of the defeats as well. Are you losing out because of a lack of quality? Are you losing out because of a lack of effort? Is there light at the end of the tunnel? And you have to then be able to make the brave decisions. And credit to the board, they had to make a call, and ultimately it's worked out well.
And taking the job yourself, was that sort of a simple decision? Was it instantaneously made by the board that when it was made that it was you that was going to come in, or was there any thinking maybe someone else?
Well, we kept pushing to try and get a different response from the head coach, and it eventually it came to a head, and it was quite clear that we had different philosophies on the game, and that would have signalled a big shift in the whole way that the club is structured, the whole way that the youth teams are coached, the way that we recruit in the juniors and the youth team. The knock-on effect is quite large. So we wanted to maintain that. That's a really important part of what we do as a football club, and we weren't prepared to sacrifice that to try and gain a few results on the pitch. We felt that there was a different way.
Soon into your reign as head coach, there was a drastic upturn in results and form, but I do remember that your first game was Bournemouth away on a Monday night, and you had no training session with the players and stuff. But how was it? How did it come about that such a dramatic turnaround? Though the result against Farnborough seemed to instigate it, where we beat a relegation rival while things were looking very desperate, and it shifted very quickly in the space of a couple of months.
It did. Firstly, the Bournemouth game, like I said, no training session, and we actually turned up, I think, 10 minutes before kick-off. So it was literally a case of read out the 11 and out you go, lads, and do what you can against the side that were top at the time. Bromley at home, after the Bedford games, Bromley at home represented, I think, quite an important game for us. We lost 1-0, but the performance surprised the players. And from that point onwards, I think they started to believe that actually they could turn the corner and they were capable of more. My role at that point was to make each individual player's job clear, and that took a lot of time on the training pitch to make sure that players knew exactly what their job was within our system at different times of the game. and we had to cover as many different scenarios as we could in a very, very short space of time. So I was very hands-on in training. This training sessions were very, very structured, and they weren't much fun. I've got to be honest, they weren't much fun for the players, because there was a lot of stop-starting. But it needed that clarity so that they could go out on a pitch and know what their job was and how they were going to be measured. And once they got to grips with that, they then embraced those roles. They accepted the role that they were given in the side, and they can grow in confidence. And as they grew in confidence, they started to trust each other a little bit more, and they started to believe that they were in a false position and they could climb the table. And it's, the mental side of the game is so important, and that was the game changer for us.
Briefly, we'll mention a couple of names, just loaning acquisitions. A couple that were here for the whole season: Piers Mitchell and Jamie Lucas, and also Ollie Watkins, who came when you just started. The impact they made was quite important in the turnaround.
Yeah, really important. Loans are there to plug gaps in your squad, and they came in, and they've done really, really well. We're a club where we have a small window of opportunity with these players because they're often unproven. So Jamie Lucas is unproven. He comes here, he proves himself, and consequently then when we go into next season, it becomes an awful lot harder to try and re-sign those players. So we have to then look at the other options that are available, and we end up then taking perhaps another unproven player, and hopefully they can match the performances of the likes of Jamie and Ollie Watkins.
Sort of on a different note, we mentioned it at the very start, the final 10 games of the season, I think we lost 9 and only gained a point in those 10 games. What do you think happened? Do you think it was because we were safe, certain players took their foot off the gas, or was it settling for where it was, where we were in the table?
I think there are quite a few different reasons of why the form or the results certainly dipped off. I think I said after the Bishop-Stortford game that it was a really, really valuable 3 points, but it came at great loss because Piers Mitchell was already injured, Tom picked up an injury, Ollie Barnes picked up an injury, so that only left us then with Clayton as the recognised central defender. Kane Ingram also picked up an injury in that game, and he managed to get through to the end. But when you lose that much experience, any team is going to find that challenging. We went out and we tried to replace those, and the players that came in, they did a reasonably good job, to the point where I didn't feel that our form dipped hugely at the beginning of that run. I felt that when we went to St Albans, we put an awful lot of effort into the Havant game at home. We then played Bath on the Tuesday night at home, put an awful lot of energy into that, and then when we travelled up to St Albans on the Saturday, we were jaded. Even before the game started, I could tell that the energy in the group wasn't the same, and we don't have the strength and depth at those times to change it. So that game in particular, I think, was a very difficult game for the squad, and perhaps one too many, where we weren't able to freshen things up. But moving on from that, I then made quite a few changes in that period. There are players that contracts are coming up. There are players that need opportunities to earn themselves a deal for this coming season, and also I need to try and explore what the limitations of the squad exactly are, and so I have to play people in slightly different positions to see if they can respond to it, and there's a degree of experimentation that goes on. rightly or wrongly. Some agree with that, some don't. But at that point, what was important for me was to learn as much as I could about the squad. So I think losing those experienced players, me shuffling the pack, so to speak, the run of 15 games and the championship form, the energy that took out of the same group of players, and then obviously losing Jamie Lucas, who was our cutting edge. I think those four reasons are why the tide seemed to turn.
It was difficult to watch as a fan. There were 4 games, I believe, in a row where we lost out to very late winners. We lost 4 or 5 games 2-1 where we conceded late on and maybe lost our discipline at the end. Was that hard to take? Is that a hard experience? It must have been infuriating for a manager for 85 minutes of a good performance and then 5 minutes it's no points at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's very difficult to take. I think the games that stick out, Basingstoke away was the last minute, or in the last 10 minutes, Whitehawk away, Concord at home, and these are sides pushing for the playoffs. And like I said, we'd spent so much energy, and I'd kept the group really, really tight. We didn't have a big squad. I actually got rid of quite a few players that weren't going to play on a regular basis. But we needed that team spirit, and it was right at the time. But as soon as we go into those games, and we'd sort of achieved what was set out when the change was made, and I stepped in, and at that point then, I think we just didn't have the concentration, because I think we were quite fatigued in those games, and we lose out then in the last 10 minutes, which like you say is frustrating, but it's also important to think, well, up to 80 minutes we were toe to toe with playoff sides, and with a more of a cutting edge up front, I think we would have been a few more goals better off at that stage of the game, and things could have been different.
Perhaps, like thematically speaking, what did you learn? What have you learned from 3/4 of a season in management of a team in the Conference South at a high level of semi-professional football?
I mean, I've learned an awful lot about how the players respond to different approaches. I think the one key lesson for me, which is something that was passed on to me from Paul Tisdale at Exeter, is that my job is about a small input to get a big output. I get the players for 4 hours a week, and we have to prepare for a game on Saturday. And there are some things that I would love to do. There are some things that I'd love to introduce, but with only 4 hours at my disposal, I have to be prepared to perhaps leave some of my ideas parked to one side, and respond to the players' needs a little bit more, as opposed to what I want from the side.
We'll move on to the under-18s and perhaps the academy in general. Just an overview of how you thought the last season went the last year.
I think the under-18s has been another great success. We've managed to achieve the League and Cup double, as well as bring some more players through to make their senior debut. The academy is a vital part of the club, and we've had a long-standing partnership with Weston College, but we have to protect that pathway, and we've decided to move in a different direction in order to allow us to not just bring players through to play conference football, but to be able to produce the types of players that are going to be able to allow us to push on and reach at least the playoffs and be successful with it. And there's no reason why we can't achieve that doing local homegrown players.
There are some structural changes coming in for the academy outlet this season, perhaps a combination with the sports active Seagulls. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we're offering a better product. We're linking up with Churchill Academy, and they're going to deliver the A levels and the BTEC sport, and then we have with our community trust then opportunities to gain valuable work experience in coaching. So that allows young players to develop on the pitch, in the classroom, and on the work front to keep their options open when they turn 18. They can go off to university, they can work within our trust, they can play in the first team. Obviously, all of that is dependent on how they perform.
Will the young players notice a difference in sort of the team structures? Is it going to be like, are they going to be wearing a different badge on their chest, or is it?
Yeah, I mean within the juniors, so from the under 7s right through to the under 16s, we have renamed it Western Community Trust, just to give a little bit more clarification on the overall structure of the programme, but everything else remains the same. The pathway is the same, and the expectations of the players are the same, and the coaching styles will remain consistent.
We'll move away from that then, and another off-the-field issue. There's been a number of efforts this season, and they'll obviously continue in the coming years, to organically build support for the first team in the local area. Just your views on how social media and also the newly announced ticket prices as well, which have changed.
Well, these things have got to help, and I think the average attendance in our division this year was 517. We were just under 300. So I want to be ambitious, and I want to see the side performing at the top end of this league, with aspirations to certainly get in the playoffs and be part of something special. But the whole town's got to get behind us. It's as simple as that, really. We've got some really, really good people involved in the club that do an awful lot of work off the field in order to try and grow our fan base. We've got a great stadium. We've got the best social media outlet in the Conference South, if not the conference overall. The programme is excellent. It's full of great images, and it's full of great articles that make the programme worth buying. And there's a lot of effort going into schools, getting kids involved in the club. We provide football opportunities right across the board. We're doing walking football with the over 50s. We do lots of different social projects that try and tackle some of the local social issues. The club have moved into the heart of the community within the town, and we're not doing that on a condition that people come in and watch. But I think if they did come along and watch, then they'd be pleasantly surprised at the level of football that we compete at. You know, we were one division lower than Bristol Rovers. You know, so let's get more people down here, get more people involved in the club, and if we want to be in the top 10 or the top 6, then we've got to do it all together.
I guess that's where the match day experience sort of thing, which really sells the club, it all comes together. I mean, for the last 5 years, it's been a very good product on the field, good quality of football, but perhaps the experience around the match day. But that is this season gradually starting to catch up with what we're showing on the pitch, and that's what you're trying to appeal to fans now, is that it's a day out as well.
Definitely. I mean, it's so important, and I mean, when I first came to the club sort of 11, 12 years ago, it wasn't a club, it was a first team that ran an under 18s on the side. This is now a club. There's something here for everybody, and it's a great family day out. The reduced season ticket prices for families, I think, indicates that, and if the club have gone out on a limb and made all these changes, it's important people respond and they come along and they support it, because the more they support it, the more we as a club are able to do, and it snowballs then.
Back to the nitty-gritty of the football then, moving forward to next season with the first team. It's obviously a difficult question to answer, but what are your aims looking forward? What is the plan? Where do you want to end up at the end of the next campaign?
Right, the plan. I want to be as high up the table as we can. If we're first, then that's great, but I want to stay first. If we're sixth, that's great, but I want to be first. If we are if we're bottom of the table, then I want to get out of the relegation zone. It's always about improvement. It is always about doing a little bit more. I'm never happy. I'm never settled. Even when we've won a game of football, I'm not one to be sort of jumping around and all the rest of it. Even at the end of games, I tend not to even say anything in the changing room, because your emotions can take over and you can end up saying things you regret, or you can go in and be celebrating points like you've won the World Cup, and to me neither of those things are helpful. My mind is always focused on the future, so as far as going into this season is concerned, the only target I will set the team is to beat every side once.
The makeup of the squad, that's obviously going to be a prominent question for fans. Can you give us any information on incomings and outgoings in the first team?
Yeah, so I've looked at the squad, I've looked at the balance of the squad, and I felt that when the loans went, we were exposed in certain areas, and I think that was clear in the last 10 games. We didn't score enough when we were on top. So the balance of the squad wasn't quite right, and it's my responsibility to address that. So I've been working hard on a few targets to bring in people that I feel can benefit in front of goal, because we do create a lot of chances, and it's a team that plays for the strikers as opposed to the strikers having to play for the team all the time. And I think any striker that is looking at the big picture, not just financially, but looking at where they're going to score the most goals in this area, then we have to be top of the list. And so that has been my priority. Now, if we have to lose a couple from within the squad in order to get the balance right, then that's what I'm prepared to do.
Is that the case with Joe McClellan, a very talented player and a nice bloke as well, and appreciated by the fans, but ultimately it's an area where we have numerous players in wide areas and attacking midfielders, but not a focal point up front. Is that sort of a sacrifice you may have to make, those sort of players?
That's
because
it.
they're surplus, you can...
I mean, you know, Joe's a very good player. He did a great job for us, and I really enjoyed working with him. He's got lots of talent, but he was also one of the higher earners here, and in the cold light of day he scored 3 goals, and I just felt that the money that I would have had to have put to him to keep him here, I would need a bigger return than 3 goals, and I feel that I can do that by putting that money somewhere else. But that's not to say that Joe isn't a good player and he didn't do a really good job for us, because he did. But if I had unlimited funds, then yeah, I would have re-signed him and kept him here, because like I said, he's an exciting player, and I hope that he gets the opportunity to play at Bath and continue to do well in his career.
One aspect that supporters perhaps won't see from the outside compared to the inside is players on contract and players that are on non-contract. Obviously, non-contract players can be lost a lot easier during the season. How many players do you envisage being on a contract come the first game of the season?
I think you need you need to find the balance between having a stable squad and also being able to have a little bit of room for manoeuvre when you need to. Some players as well, they just respond better to being on one or the other. You know, some like the stability and they know they're going to be here and they're settled. Whereas other players need to have that threat hanging over them. And I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to get the best out of the players. So I've got to make sure that each individual player has the right circumstances to get the best performances out on the pitch. So with a squad of 16, I would want 8 or 9 under contract.
Okay. A very difficult question again. What is the ceiling for this squad? There's obviously a core of players that are very talented and come through the academy. So what is the ceiling? How far can they go with a couple of players like a centre forward, a striker that scores goals? How far can it go?
Nobody knows. You know, some managers, some coaches like to be, you know, Mystic Meg and say this player's never going to be good enough or that player's going to go on and play for England. The reality is nobody knows. Peter Beardsley was turned down many a time. Ian Wright turned down many a time. I'm not one to sit here and say that's it now. So and so is not going to make the grade. I'll give them the opportunity. If they don't reach the level that I expect, then that'll be the end for them as far as being here is concerned. But in a different environment, they might respond differently, and they might go on and be more successful. But for me, the ceiling within the squad is how much they believe in their own ability and how much they trust their teammates. Boreham Wood, they've gone up. Bromley have gone up. I think Bromley at home, I think we were unlucky not to win the game. And then we've played many of the playoff sides and either won or come away having been disappointed with the result because our performances warranted more. So we'll go as far as we can.
So how much time do you have now before you get them in for pre-season and all the hard slog?
29th of June, we're back in. We've got quite a high number of pre-season games, and the players will be working particularly hard this pre-season because, like I said, I had to adjust my own strategy for games this season because I took over midway, and it's a bit like trying to repair a car while it's moving. You don't get the time to do everything you need to do. You just got to do what you can to patch it up and keep it going. This pre-season, I'll be able to transfer more of my ideas about how I think we can go out, perform well and win games, and the players are going to need to be very fit to do that.
Okay, we'll move on to some questions from social media. Alan Cooper asks, are you looking to bring in players or will you be looking to promote from the youth team, or maybe somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, somewhere in the middle, both. We need to bring players in, players that are going to be able to pick up the first team responsibilities with ease and crack on. We're also going to bring in a couple of loans with a view of them being part of our squad until at least January. That gives us time then to help them along the way in their careers, but also for our own younger players to gain some senior experience. And then at that time, then we're able to make the decision of do we keep the loans or do we send them back and give the younger players then their opportunity in the first team. But we will always be a club that looks to promote from within our academy. But the balance has to be right. We're never going to have a team that is made up of just academy products. We still need to have those experienced pros that are able to come in and get the balance right for the team.
Speaking of experienced pros, Phil Batchelor asks, are Tom Jordan and Clayton Fortune staying on the team and in coaching roles as well next season?
Both have signed, both will be player coaches next year, with the emphasis definitely on the playing side. Neither of them are ready to hang up their boots, and I don't think they will be for a year or two at least. They're both in their early 30s, even though Tom looks a lot older. So I think they're at a good age to contribute well on the pitch, contribute well off it, and help to bring the best out of the rest of the squad.
Going back to loan signings, Chris Gordon asks, what is the likelihood of signing Jamie Lucas and Ollie Watkins back on loan? Both were quality players last season. They seem to enjoy their time at Worcester.
Ollie Watkins is a no. He came in, did extremely well for us, but we've decided to go in a different direction. Jamie Lucas is a possibility because Rovers are still in the playoffs at the moment to get back in the Football League. I haven't contacted them because their focus is fully on getting promotion, not on the future of Jamie Lucas. So when the dust settles on that one, I will be putting the call in, and we can see what happens. I mean, he went to Gloucester in the season as well and didn't quite have the same experience as he did here. So I'm hoping that if they are looking to put him out on loan and gain more experience, that will be the first port of call.
Steve Hardcastle asks, if you stay on as manager, please play with 4 at the back. Are there any tactical reconsiderations you might have
Yeah, there
coming
are.
into this season?
Yeah, there are.
Was it a means to an end, the three of the
It
back?
was. I mean, I wanted us to be able to be comfortable with the ball at our feet in our own half, and the extra centre half I think gave us that. But you can't do it every single week, because some teams have the structure and the quality to expose the weaknesses within that system. So we do need to be able to operate in a number of different shapes and formations depending on what the game demands. But like I said, coming in mid-season, it was just making their role clear, trying to be good at it, and keeping it simple. But now I've got a pre-season ahead of me. I'm hoping that we'll be able to be more versatile.
One final question from me, I guess. Do you enjoy being a manager of a senior football team at high level like this? Is it fun? Is it very stressful?
Fun?
A lot of people would dream of a job where you could play football manager, fantasy football, things like that. They look at things like that. Is it actually what it's cracked up to be? Is it?
It's a very complex situation, and you have to accept that there are some things you can control and there's some things that you can't. And I'm still learning, to be honest with you. Some of the games, some of the decisions, some of the things that either officials have done or players have done, I find very hard to process, and that's why I think sometimes, like I say, it's best for me to say nothing at the end of the game, because I have to make sure that I have a level head when I approach these problems. The bit I enjoy the most is on the training pitch. That's where my enjoyment comes from. I feel that victory's in the preparation, and if we've worked hard enough in training and we've covered what we needed to cover, then I've sort of done my job a bit. And Saturday or match day, it's all about the players, and it's all about how they can take what we've done on the training pitch out onto the stadium pitch. And on a match day, I would much rather watch it from a bird's eye view as opposed to being in the dugout, because I am quite a tactical coach as opposed to a shouter and baller, even though it may not come across like that. It's because I'm coaching from the sideline, because I haven't had the time in training or pre-season etc. to lay those foundations that I need. So hopefully this season I'll enjoy it more, provided the players are able to do what I'm telling them to do on a match day.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ryan. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam.
Cheers.
Cheers.